So I see a few people here in the live chat talk about how a certain individual called Farid made refutation videos about me, and they have been here since much earlier in the day because I announced that we will talk about having a possible debate, and they are so much interested in seeing us have a disagreement. So some people mentioned that this Farid refuted me and all that stuff. So
yeah, I somehow saw. I don't even remember who sent it to me, but they sent me like a short clip of him. I thought it was pretty bad, and we might have to address that a little more because I mean, if that's how lame the responses are, then you might want to. And they're responding to it and feeling obliged to post responses to it. Must mean it's kind of a sensitive issue, right? If anyone understand the significance of the issue, right? Here's the significance of the issue. Muhammad, according to the Quran, his only miracle is the Quran. He's challenged over and over and over again. Why can't you produce miracles like the prophets who came before you? And the response is, no, he's only a warner. He's only this, he's only that. And well, he came with the Quran, didn't he? But Muslims, because you have tons of miracle claims in the Hadith, which come from 2 centuries later, and it's obvious where these come from, right? And in that 2 century gap, Muslims keep running into Jews and Christians, and the Jews and Christians keep going, hey, where's the miracles? Where are the miracles? And so, Muslims start coming back with, oh, here we go. Fresh ink on this, but yeah, we've got our miracle stories too. And so anyway, but yeah, so the response is, yeah, but the Quran claims that the Quran isn't Muhammad's only miracle. And so what do you do about that? And so Muslims have to try and find miracles in the Quran, and there are only a couple things I can point to. They can argue for the night journey, but the main thing they go with is that Muhammad split the moon, right? He split it. It's a big miracle, and they have to base this on a passage. It doesn't say anything about Muhammad doing anything, right? It just says the moon is cleft asunder, right? And so you see, that's it. So they kind of need that in order to defend their claim that Muhammad was miraculous.
Yeah, so I was recently researching the whole moon splitting issue again. I made a video about the moon splitting claim, the moon splitting miracle, here on this channel about 2 years ago, or over a year ago at least. It was quite a while ago, whatever. And recently I sat down and started writing stuff in Turkish about the same topic, because I'm planning on releasing a video in Turkish about the moon splitting. So I was going through everything again, going through all my arguments. And one of the main arguments that I make was if the moon had split in two in Muhammad's lifetime in the 7th century, then this moon splitting, at the same time when it's observed in Mecca, the moon being split in two would have also been seen in Europe, in Africa, in India, in Persia, in China, in Japan, and many other places. And people would definitely, one of those great civilizations would definitely make a note of that. They would know that. People would observe that. People would write that down. And we would know by now that in the 7th century, for some reason, somehow the moon split in two and came together again. It is just impossible. I mean, no sane person could say that the moon splitting took place, and no one in the world saw that. We're talking about civilizations. In the 7th century, Arabia was very backward. They had nothing. They were just desert dwellers who were afraid of jinns at night. At the same time, the Europeans were very advanced. The Byzantine Romans were very advanced. They had records. They had historians. They were looking at the sky, at the objects. In India, astronomy was very advanced at that time. It was advanced. People were every night and day. There were people who would observe the sky and see what is happening to the moon and the stars and all that stuff. At the same time, in China and Japan, a lot of writings and science and buildings and religious scripture and all that stuff was going on. So the world was pretty advanced. Something like that would have never gone unnoticed. Yeah. So in that old video that I made, I pointed out that is the reason why the moon splitting cannot be true, because it would have definitely been recorded. Now I want to share something with you. I want to share a piece of a clip with you, which is from this individual called Farid. I just thought it because I saw that someone actually made a meme about it. They found it so ridiculous, and I can't believe that I actually missed this. I went to his video in which he's trying to refute my moon splitting, and look what I found. Look what his argument is. Give me a second. Let me share this. All right. Oh, wait. Share audio. Here. Okay, now. The moon would have been visible in these areas. Or late at night, towards the morning, in these areas. You would expect that the Persians and the Romans, in this time the Byzantines, would document such a miracle, because both of them, especially the Romans, kept records strictly of pretty much everything.
There's another issue with an advanced assumption here. One of the reasons why we do not have heaps of documented evidence was because most people were asleep at night. Remember, this is the 7th century. More importantly, there is no reason to assume that the split occurred for a long duration of time. So even if one was awake at the time, it is not likely that one would have noticed the moon splitting.
Okay. Did you hear that? Did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard it.
The reason we don't have any secondary sources. Wait, let me show that again. Okay, I have to show you this again. Oh my god. Let me know if you can hear it. The moon would have been, especially the records strictly of pretty much everything.
There's another issue with an advanced assumption here. One of the reasons why we do not have heaps of documented evidence was because most people were asleep at night. Remember, this is the 7th century. More importantly, there is no reason to assume that the split occurred for a long duration of time. So even if one was awake at the time, it is not likely that one would have noticed the moon splitting.
Am I the only one who thinks this is one of the most ridiculous things that I've ever heard?
He's got a point. Most people would be asleep. I mean, come on, you can't deny that. People sleep at night. Come on.
Okay. So the argument here is we don't have any secondary reports of the moon splitting in two in the 7th century because it happened at night, because people were sleeping. People were sleeping. They didn't see that because people were asleep. They were tired. It was night. The moon splitting happened at night, of course. That it happens at night because that's when the moon is out.
Farid destroys the apostate prophet. No, guys, yeah. In case you didn't know, I mean, AP already touched on this. Ancient civilizations of the time, many of them were obsessed with astronomy and on detailing the movements of the stars and things like that, and the moon and all these, getting every comets, all these little details. They always took note of things that were happening because they took these things as like signs and things like that. So they always recorded things like eclipses and everything else. The idea that, they'd be sitting around and the moon splits in half in the sky and just no one in the entire world notices it. And the Quran itself doesn't even draw attention to it. In fact, you can even read, if you read like the Yusuf Ali translation of the Quran, he points out that there are different interpretations of the verse, even among Muslims. Some regard that as like a warning of the day of judgment. The moon is cleft asunder. So even Muslims don't agree. So it's so unclear, even in the Quran, what it's talking about, that even Muslims don't agree that this is talking about Muhammad splitting the moon. It's not until you get to the Hadith a long time after that they conclude that this is about Muhammad splitting the moon. So yeah, the idea, it's just people at night, they sleep, and so they don't know what's going on in the sky, and a giant dragon could come and just gobble up the moon and no one's going to notice. They're all asleep.
Yeah. So the people at that time, they were all asleep, and so some people saw it. Some people, in the following seconds of the video, he even claims that some people might have seen it, but they were probably questioned their own sanity, and they didn't want to tell anyone else because no one would believe them that the moon split in two. People believed in all kinds of nonsense at that time.
No, hang on. AP, just imagine yourself back here, right? If you're sitting there, right, you're one of the people who's up at night, you're the guard, you're on guard in the city and stuff like that. You look up, you see the moon splitting in half. Aren't you going to be like, everyone get up? Look at this. Everyone. Hey, you. Look at that. Look. Hey, you right there. Could you look up, please? That's going to be my verification. No, guys, they recorded every detail about everything that they saw happening in the skies. They recorded every time Halley's Comet came by. They recorded all these things. They would have been pretty darn freaked out by the moon splitting in half, but no one was. Why? Most obvious explanation is didn't happen.
Yeah, it didn't happen. I mean, look at this. To take a look at this. This is what we see. I mean, the Islamic Hadiths even described that the moon was so clear. It was so clear that people clearly observed the moon splitting in two, and its parts moving toward a mountain and the other toward the other mountain. One Hadith even says they could see the Hira mountain in, between the two parts of the moon. That's how clear it was. And imagine you are in different parts of the world. You are in the Sassanid Empire, which is huge, which is advanced, which is currently in its golden age, and is neighboring the Arabs. And you see the Romans, the Eastern Romans, and they look up to such a clear moon. This clear moon is being split in two, but those people don't notice it because they are asleep. Mm-hmm. Because they're asleep, or they think, "Oh, this is not happening. I don't believe this is happening. I'm not gonna tell anyone about this. I'm not gonna write this down either."
I'm getting some bad ideas here now, man. I'm thinking with this little picture right here, right? Send it to some of my buddies who do special effects. Get them to just make a video of that moon splitting in half, right? If I can find, and I don't know who I could possibly find who would be willing to dress up as Muhammad and be Muhammad, but fortunately, the only guy I can think of lives right beside a desert. So we go out to a desert. He's dressed up like Muhammad, and we can have a sort of a flashback or an instant replay. Oh man, could do that, and then have it in an episode of Muhammad's Boom Boom Room, right? Where he goes, that reminds me of the time I split the moon. And then a flashback to him in the desert going, everyone look up, it's splitting. And then, yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I got it. Thank you, Muslims, for the ideas you give me.
Can you believe this? Can you believe in believing such nonsense and actually thinking? I mean, I don't know. I don't want to go into very much into mockery now. I'm just doing this because
I'll do it.
I'm just doing this because this guy Farid, he spent a lot of time insulting me. Talking all kinds of garbage while he was supposed to refute me, which is why I stopped watching his videos. But actually, this guy actually thinks that is a legitimate defense of Islam's miracle claim. I mean, how can you imagine yourself actually thinking that is a legitimate defense, and then actually make that a video, make that a part of your refutation video? Yep. People didn't see it. We don't have any secondary sources because everyone else in the world in the 7th century, which was not very backward at all, astronomy started maybe 1,000 years before that. And no one saw it. Everyone was asleep. It was at night, of course. That's why we don't have any records. How could you possibly think that is a legitimate argument in defense of Islam? That's how desperate Islam is. That's how desperate, how dumb Islamic theology and Islamic beliefs, Islamic scripture is. That people have to resort to such ridiculously stupid arguments in order to defend Islam. Seriously, this is what we and people are bringing up this. If I wanted to go into what this guy says, if I wanted to go into all his arguments, I would sit here, I would mock the hell out of him. I would make so much fun of all of this. When you see one single example of what this does, and people are bringing this guy as a good criticism, as a good analysis of everything I've done before.
Welcome to Islam. And guys, I just have to point out, right? Keep in mind, I'm a Christian. I'm a guy who believes in miracles, right? I believe miracles happen. So my criticism is not, it's just stupid to think that the moon could be, split, stuff like that. God could do that. God could split the moon if he wants. So it's more along the lines. It's more along the lines of wait a minute, you've got the Quran. The Quran repeatedly denies that Muhammad could perform miracles. You've got this completely ambiguous verse that even Muslims don't agree on that just says, and the moon has been cleft asunder. Doesn't say anything about Muhammad doing it, Muhammad commanding it, anything like that. And then that verse is revealed. And then there are tons of verses that were revealed after that about people challenging Muhammad to perform a miracle, and Muhammad getting a revelation saying, oh, I'm only a warner. I don't perform miracles. My miracle is the Quran, which it should have, if that were a miracle that had actually occurred, the response should have been, what are you talking about? I split the moon, you giant morons. But it never says that, right? It just goes along assuming that Muhammad performed miracles, like Allah suddenly forgot that he split the moon, right? So, I mean, does Allah have Alzheimer's, or what are you guys trying to tell us about your God? And that combined with, if you're saying it happened in the sky, so just to be clear again, if I believe that miracles occur, if you say, man, I was in my house and I slipped and fell and I broke my arm and I prayed to God, and then, my arm got better. I'd think, okay, well, maybe, I don't know. It could, I guess it could happen. I'm a Christian. The point is there's no way for me to really test that. So I can't say one way or another. I could say it would fit. It's possible given my worldview, but I can't affirm that. But if you say the sun just disappeared or something like that, or the moon disappeared or Mars disappeared, well, that's something that's kind of publicly testable, right? And so if you're saying the moon split in half, well, that's something that people would have noticed, and they just didn't.
Yeah. Which shows how ridiculous such a belief is. I mean, go ahead, believe that is just a metaphor. Go ahead, believe that it doesn't actually say that the moon was literally split into, up there. That didn't happen. Accept a different explanation to that. The thing is, the problem is they can't, because that narrative is directly according to mainstream Islam, which is followed by more than 80%, 90% of Muslims. The hadiths clearly say that numerous hadith, I think over 5 or so, or I don't know, maybe 10, reaffirm and say that the moon literally split in two. It literally happened, and Muhammad said to the people, "Behold." One of the hadith says that that the Meccan polytheists asked for a miracle to happen. So they said, if you are a prophet of this Almighty Allah that you claim you are, then please show us a miracle. And then Muhammad told them to look at the moon, and the moon was split in two, and he said, "Behold." And then the people were like, "No, this must be magic." The hadith literally say that, and there is no way around to deny that. If you want to deny that hadith, then you would have to deny most practices of your Islamic religion, because that hadith is by Islamic standards completely sahih. If you want to, so authentic, if you want to assert that hadith is somehow wrong and unreliable, then you would have to end up denying the way you pray, denying the way you fast, denying the prayers that you say during the 5 daily prayers, the way people dress and everything. There is so much that you would in the end have to abandon and have to doubt as well. So by Islamic belief, it literally happened, and that is a ridiculously stupid belief. I'm sorry. This should be sufficient enough to debunk Islam, to point out how and to see how wrong Islam is, how it is built on absolutely ridiculous and superstitious claims. It is just plain wrong. It is dumb, and it relies on such apologetics as the one that you've just witnessed.
Revelation 22:13 said, Farid said he is going to do a video about David Wood.
Oh.
Uh-oh. I mean, I hope the quality is top notch, just like response AP. Now, I have no idea who Farid is. As far as I know, that was the only clip I've seen of him. I can't recall ever seeing anything else. But yeah, guys, ask him if he's taking requests. Ask him to reply to my video. Top 5 most disgusting facts about Muhammad. That one, right? I'm actually legitimately interested in hearing Muslim responses to that, right? Like with the issue of Muhammad sucking on kids' tongues, and with Muhammad constantly being covered in semen, and Muhammad having people suck on his fingers and stuff like that. And his explanation, right? And keep in mind, he gives the explanation why, that Allah hides a blessing somewhere on some particle of food. And so you don't want to just wipe your hands on a napkin, because that particle, that blessing particle, might, go on the napkin, and then Satan's going to steal it. Right. So you have to actually, and then, but yeah, the main one I'm interested in is why Muhammad was always covered in semen, right? Because I can think of possible explanation. The best case scenario that I can imagine is that Muhammad just used his clothes as a rag after having sex, and he just wiped himself with it, and then would go to the mosque. Guys, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go ahead and watch the video. But it would say that Aisha would say, hey, Muhammad, he was going to the mosque, and I would have to jump up and scratch all the semen off him and wash all the semen off him. And then he would go to the mosque, and I would still see more on him and stuff like that. And so why is this guy covered in semen? It's either his semen, in which case, why has he got his own semen all over him? Or it's someone else's semen, in which case, please explain that. But I would love to hear this, because again, best case scenario, he just wipes semen all over it. He wipes his own semen all over himself, and then he goes to the mosque and starts hugging his friends. That is the most disgusting thing I've ever heard of in my life. I would love to hear a Muslim respond to that. So tell Farid that. I want to hear it. And I will actually listen to him. If he has some sort of reasonable defense, I would love to hear it.
So you said you didn't know who Farid is. Farid actually made himself known in the public once. There was this one time that he actually attracted a lot of attention for something that he said, and I think the specific thing that he said is a very very astonishing thing that you should maybe see. It landed on YouTube videos, on websites, on Twitter profiles, and all the other stuff. Check the screen. This is how Farid became known in the public. I love how so many of those Islamophobes don't have the ability to represent me fairly by calling this child rape. How is it child rape when there is parental consent?
So, guys, think about what he's saying right here, right? So according to Farid here, a Muslim man can say, hey, go bang my 9-year-old daughter. And you go in there and do it. She has no clue what's going on. She hasn't consented, but the parent has consented. And so he says, how is it rape? This is wild stuff. But this is what you get. This is what you get from this religion. Interesting stuff. This reminds me, by the way, I've been wanting to make a video of this. I haven't gotten to it yet. But in that Yasser Qadi clip where I used it in a video where he was telling Muslims to stop lying about Aisha, claiming that she was older than 9. He said we don't lie. We don't lie for our religion. Obviously, plenty of people disagree with him on that and are glad to lie. But in that same clip, he said something that's along these lines. He said, so it gets brought up, hey, Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old girl. Isn't that kind of messed up? And his response was, I find it amusing that people would complain about something that Aisha herself did not complain about. And I thought that was so disturbing, but it's like this in terms of, you think, oh, this is what this religion does to people's minds, right? This is Yasser Qadi saying, well, since Aisha doesn't complain about it, then therefore it's amusing to him that other people would complain about it. Look, guys, I'm going to tell you, I grew up in a West Virginia trailer park. You'd see women come out and they got black eyes, right? Like, we know where they got the black eyes. They got the black eyes because their husband was beating them and stuff, right? We're little kids. We could tell. You could tell a woman got beat by her husband. But think about it. She didn't complain. She didn't come out complaining. Therefore, notice, to be consistent here, if I were to say to Yasser Qadi, hey, it's messed up that guy punched his wife in the face and gave her a black eye, Yasser Qadi would have to say, I find it amusing that you're complaining about something the woman herself did not complain about. And that's just sick, right? Sometimes women aren't exactly in a position to voice their complaints about things that are happening to them. And you hope that other people do. You hope someone else. I mean, again, we were kids, but you hope someone, you wish someone would go over there and say, hey, stop hitting your wife, or I'm going to make you stop. So you got, there's that. But notice it's perfectly fine because we don't have Aisha's complaint. Notice that this assumes that we know everything Aisha said. But two, I mean, think about it. What was Aisha? Was it the safest place to come along and say, hey, this guy's a pervert, man? Is that a safe thing to say in a 7th century Arabia after the spread of Islam? Guys, there were probably all kinds of complaints that people did not feel safe to voice back then. But even if she was convinced that this is just something I have to put up with, doesn't mean that we can't point to it and say, hey, there's something wrong here. But this is Yasser Qadi, right? This is one of the great Muslim scholars of the world.
We have a lot of stories too of Aisha conspiring against Muhammad with his other wives, complaining, making complaints directly to him, telling him that it looks like Allah is very quick to satisfy Muhammad's desires and all that stuff. And I heard this same thing too. For some reason, I didn't actually think very much about it. But now that you make the comparison to a beaten wife, it becomes much clearer how disgusting it actually sounds. That so many Muslims and Muslim apologists come out saying, "Well, you are talking about how Muhammad basically, I don't even know how to use the words here in this case, but that he basically violated a child. But who are you to speak? Because Aisha herself was quite happy with it. That's what they say. Aisha herself didn't.
Oh yeah. Yasser Qadi goes further. This is the video I wanted to make. Yasser Qadi goes even farther. He said it was the perfect marriage.
Perfect marriage.
It was the perfect marriage, right? This 50-some-year-old dude climbing on top of a 9-year-old girl. And all the stuff that she had to go through, and her thinking that she's about to be stoned to death, and her constantly having to compete with his other wives and all this stuff, and he looks at that and he says, it's perfect, it can't be any better. So that's again the shocking part is, I mean, think about this. If when a Muslim says, hey, it's a different culture, we look at that and we say that's really messed up. But, if you were raised in that time where it's normal, it's kind of hard to break away. I get that. I understand that different cultures, if you grow up in a culture where, let's say, racism is completely normal, you tend to grow up as a racist, right? And you just think it's totally normal. So I get that. They just can't stop there, right? They have to go out and blurt out, it's the perfect marriage, right? They have to say something that's completely ridiculous. Or Yusuf Estes, it's a greater love story than Romeo and Juliet, Muhammad and Aisha. And they always have to exaggerate, right? And it's they make it easy, right? Because if you had said something like this, hey, it was a different time, it was a rough situation, rough times, Muhammad's in all these wars and he's trying to establish himself as a prophet, and he got these revelations and all these things, and said, and with all that said, even though it was really weird by our standards, things worked out and they had an okay marriage. If he had said that, I'd have been like, okay, I'm not even going to respond to this. But he just can't say that. He has to say perfect marriage. It was the perfect marriage. Gosh, then you got to respond, because now you're just saying something that's completely idiotic.
Yeah. It reminds me of another issue with Farid here, by the way. I was following him for at that time, and he made this tweet in which he shared with his Muslim followers and his Muslim audience a tweet or a story that is supposed to be beautiful. That is supposed to make people kind of feel gooey, feel weird with Muhammad and his story with Aisha. And he shared this story which somehow goes that one day Muhammad was walking with Aisha, and then he walked slower, and he told her, he said something like, let's race. And then they raced together, they ran together. And, Muhammad and Aisha ran together, they raced. So it's a wonderful couple. Muhammad is such a romantic man who plays with his wife. And I thought about how that hadith, how this report, this story, when someone like Farid shares it, is received among Muslim women, for example, who love to hear such stories about Muhammad, how Muhammad was a romantic, emotional man who cared about people, who cared about his wives and all that stuff. In reality, when we look at it in reality, if you think about the details for a second, we are talking about a 55-year-old man, approximately, playing with a 9-year-old girl running together, racing with a 9-year-old girl. So a 55-year-old man racing with a little child who's 9 years old.
She was probably running from it.
So that is the actual picture. That is the picture you are actually supposed to get if you really think about the details. If you try to work the details through in your mind, the picture that you get is this 55-year-old man running and playing with a 9-year-old girl, and that 9-year-old girl is his wife. At night, in the same night, he will go and he will climb into her bed and will want to have sex with her. That is what you are supposed to get from this actual story. Not that Muhammad was a romantic, wonderful, fantastic man.
He'll wake up to head to the mosque to lead the prayers, and she's gonna have to stop him and say, "Hey, let me get all the semen off your clothes, because people are gonna see the semen all over your clothes, and it never occurs to you to wash it. Never crosses your mind. Hey, I need to wash all this semen off. I mean, but you're my husband, so we got to keep up appearances." So.